Well, hi there, Alan. I appreciate you joining my visit with you this morning or afternoon. I'm really grateful for the time that you gave me. Um, I wanted to brag about you for a minute or two, if that's all right with you. And this is from what I know. And you're a seriously accomplished professional researcher with over 25 years working at the top of scientific method studies regarding fitness and nutrition. And you hold a National Academy of Sports Medicine certified personal trainer, which is impressive. And I believe you told me that you also create or have created NASM nutrition coaching and continuing education content. And you devote your career to helping the rest of us. So you are speaking, writing, and educating us all on how to be better at our food and our nutrition and our exercise. So once again, thank you for visiting with me and welcome to our call today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Brett. And yes, I am an active working class stiff in the fitness space.
And everyone that knows you, everyone that's serious in this industry, like I have a serious trainer friend, I call him Big Nick because he is very good and he's a professional competitive bodybuilder back in the day. He knew of you instantly. And my coach, Will Vargas, who we'll talk about, says you're a monster. And so if I didn't know that before I reached out to you. And so I think I joked with you that I feel like I'm texting with Elvis or Babe Ruth. And then I thought twice about it and I'm like, wait a minute, they're both a little bit fat and a little bit dead. So I decided I'm comparing you now to Tom Cruise, which is my background. So that's why I chose Maverick.
That's, you know what, I want to say that's maybe my favorite movie in the action genre. I've never been moved by a movie like that. It was just spectacular. I've seen it twice in the theaters.
Oh wow, I would love seeing it again too. It was surreal how they did the flashbacks to the first movie. It's crazy.
I loved it. I loved every bit of that movie, every bit of the spirit of that movie, and every bit of what it had as well as what it didn't have.
So, 100%.
Yeah.
But I next wanted to give you a little bit of info or background on me and my group. So we belong to Will Vargas. He owns an online body recomposition program that's known as the Recomp Blueprint. And I joined Will's program about 3 years ago. And I've just been thriving implementing his protocols. So kind of managing to hang out at around 10% body fat, started the program at 25%. And kind of more exciting to me, being a health nerd, has been watching my health metrics. And so I measure my blood labs every 6 months, and I follow like Inside Tracker gives me some ideas around what the biomarkers of longevity are and fun stuff. Like my HDL has skyrocketed from 64 up to just this summer it's 92, which doesn't even make sense to me. My testosterone is measuring at over 1,000, which is pretty good for an old guy. And my arterial age, which is measured by the carotid ultrasound, shows my arteries think they're age 24, and I'm 57 by the
That's so good.
by the birthday candles.
Wonderful.
But anyway, I've really been engaged in my fitness, and especially from a longevity angle. And I did challenge myself and my brain, and I got myself an NASM certified personal trainer certificate in June. And I post a lot of longevity articles, which I sometimes bore you with snapshots of those into your direct messages. But I'm considered the group's longevity coach. And anyway, really excited to be doing all that. So I have prepared a short list of questions, and I thought it'd be real interesting to get some of your feedback and opinions. So let's get aboard the knowledge gains train, using some cool words from you.
Yes, sir.
Well, in your book, which I have right here, Flexible Dieting, you distinguish the idea of flexible dietary control versus rigid dietary control. And I think a really great visual chart. And it discusses in a continuum, right? From one side being keeping your eye on maybe your protein grams, but otherwise using guidelines and intuitive eating, to maybe tracking your calories, your macros, allowing some cheat meals, to another end of the continuum where you really are allowing you have allowed foods and prohibited foods, and you eat similar meals with minimal variations. You also state that flexible dieting allows the freedom to change between these strategies kind of based on your goals, which may change over time. And I would say my fitness group, my body recomp guys probably represent a little bit in each of these buckets, and maybe they change over time. To me, it's all about, for me personally, my protein gram intake. I don't want to count calories. It's knowing about what's good for my body. And then I do understand what I enjoy. And then I do, keep track of my progress in terms of seeing that my weight stays where I want it to be. So kind of those things keep me in the guardrails. But I
Mhm.
wanted to ask you, can you give us your own personal approach, kind of how you might modify your flexible dieting to meet your goals and how they might change over time?
That's a great question. Me personally, I I'm a very non-quantitative person when it comes to dietary approach, only because when you get two nutrition degrees, I mean, my undergrad and my graduate degrees are both in nutrition. You're basically pounded with the values, the nutritive values of various foods and beverages, and you get to essentially memorize what the values of these foods are, whether they're your own favorite foods or other people's favorite foods. And so certainly my favorite foods, I just have them committed and embedded in my brain wiring. I know how many grams of protein, carbs, and fats any given portion of food has already. So it's almost just sort of a matter of trying not to obsess over that stuff. Like my personal approach is to consume roughly 30 to 50 grams of protein, um, 3 to 4 times a day. I usually get 4 times a day, about 40 grams of protein. And then the rest, I just don't track beyond making sure that each day I consume pretty much all of the food groups. So if you think of the food groups as basically six groups that you can subdivide further, but the foundation of the groups would be the meats, or the high protein group, because protein powders are also in the meat group, and also the vegan meat substitutes and that sort of thing. That's also in the meat group. And then there's the fats, which are, nuts, seeds, oils, those sorts of foods. And then fibrous vegetables or non-starchy vegetables. And then the starches, which you can subdivide into starchy vegetables and grains. And then there's the milk group, or the milk and milk product group, the dairy group, and then the fruits. So that's six food groups, I believe. And I just get a certain amount of servings from each group, like ranging from 1 to 3 servings per group. And I basically assemble my own serving system, and servings are a very subjective thing, but as long as you have an idea of what constitutes a serving, and as long as you are within the right ballpark across the span basically of the week, I try to get a balance of those food groups in, try to get the full range in each day, but sometimes it doesn't always work out. But um, that's basically my nutrition. I get 1 to 3 servings of each of those 6 food groups. I make sure that I get about 40-ish grams of protein in 4 times a day. And as long as I'm within that ballpark, I'm doing everything, pretty much everything we know, uh, everything nutritional science knows to achieve a well-balanced, well-constructed diet. There are little things that I do to kind of optimize things. Like I do take a multivitamin. I actually take two different multivitamins, and I also take fish oil because I don't always consume a bunch of fatty fish throughout the week. So I just take fish oil. I also take vitamin D. I don't get nearly the kind of sun that I should be getting. Um, And vitamin D, generally speaking, is not abundant in the diet. So I also take magnesium, which is pretty scarce in most diets. Um, I also take vitamin C. There's enough data out there for me to take vitamin C for the purpose of kind of augmenting, I guess, immunity, as well as the the function and the effects of taking collagen as well. So vitamin C and collagen are a couple of supplements I take. And then let's see, what else do I take? Vitamins. Let me go through the list so I don't miss anything here. So we got the two multis, magnesium, vitamin C, vitamin D, and creatine. And I'm wondering if I'm missing something here. Omega 3s.
Oh yeah, the fish oils, right?
Fish oil. So those are my supplements that I augment my well-balanced diet with.
Very
And
good.
yeah, and I know that macronutritionally, I probably fall in the neighborhood of about 160 to 180 grams of protein a day, and roughly an equal-ish, a slightly less amount of carbs than that. And then fat falls roughly in 70 to 90 grams a day.
Very
And
cool.
yeah. And so, but I know those gram targets, but I don't track them. I just literally give a crap about my 4 substantial protein hits in the day and making sure that I get the range of foods across the groups for most of the days of the week.
That's awesome. And that was a bonus to give us your insights into your supplements too. So thank you very much for that too. I love that philosophy. Focus on the protein per feedings and then think about your categories. That's
Yep.
great.
Yeah. And I like to come up with these mnemonic devices and stuff. So the way to memorize the food groups is Meg's fabulous figure stopped missing fruit. And then the first 2 letters of each word correspond with the first 2 letters of the food groups.
Okay.
So meat, fat, fibrous vegetables, starches, milk, and fruit.
I'm going to listen to this afterwards and take that down because it was too fast for me to write. That's wonderful. Hey, so next I wanted to get into the plant versus animal debate, if that sounds
Sure.
like fun. So I have men in my group who prefer the vegetarian diet and lifestyle. And there's even some prominent scientist experts such as Dr. David Sinclair from Harvard Medical School, who strongly emphasizes vegetarian foods and thinks that is beneficial for increased longevity. We know there are certain proteins, right, called essential that our body can't synthesize and we must get them from foods. And we read in your book that animal proteins generally have higher essential amino acid content, as well as the branch chain amino acids, which you write are critical for the muscle protein synthesis.
Mhm.
But I also read that you give a thoughtful discussion that there's not a simple declaration that animal protein is the winner. And so I was hoping you could discuss with us how the vegetarian diet approach can be successful and what kind of vegetable proteins are required to consider for optimal nutrition and muscle building.
Yeah, man. That is a freaking great question. And there's a lot of controversy wrapped into it. And I have my opinions on the traditional longevity model. And I have my opinions on guys like David Sinclair. Sinclair is obviously a smart guy, obviously an accomplished professor, and has put out some interesting research in this area. But he's a bit of a guru, and he has this habit of strongly proclaiming certain would-be truths, supposed truths about longevity that he takes from animal data and extrapolates towards humans. It's really interesting. I read his supplement regimen. It contains metformin, and oh boy, the research on metformin is really hit and miss, and it's really mixed. Metformin, yeah, it's an effective anti-hyperglycemic agent, but it is not a win-win type of compound to be taking. So metformin actually antagonizes some of the favorable cardiovascular effects of exercise. And this is both in the resistance training realm as well as the aerobic training realm. It'll actually mitigate the positive adaptations of exercise. So it's not a good idea to just take metformin as somebody with normal and healthy blood glucose control. It just, taking metformin for longevity in quotes is a stupid idea.
Yeah.
So I don't like how he's promoted that. And I don't necessarily like how he's really hyped up resveratrol as some sort of health halo having compound, to the degree that, well, you just may well go over to his affiliate websites or whatever and buy resveratrol as a supplement. I think it's much more conducive to longevity to consume foods that contain those types of pigments. It is conducive to longevity to consume things like berries and consume things like grapes. There may be a little bit of synergy to the resveratrol within grape juice and within wine, actually, that's associated with longevity, but just the data are not strong enough to compel people to seek out resveratrol supplementation, for example. And I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent. And another thing about Sinclair and Longo and their ilk, they are stuck on this 1990s model of anti-aging that bows to the data on rodents, worms, and flies where protein restriction extended life expectancy. That's just not how it works in humans. So humans are very different from worms and fruit flies in the sense that muscle is our body armor. We are musculoskeletal entities, unlike a lot of our animal kingdom friends. And so we particularly rely on the optimization of the musculoskeletal system to achieve optimal cardiometabolic health. So our musculoskeletal system essentially dictates the state of cardiovascular health that we attain and maintain. And so anything we can do to maintain muscle tissue, and not just a passable minimal amount of muscle tissue, but whatever we can do to maintain abundant muscle tissue while maintaining leanness is kind of the holy grail. And the whole topic of abundant muscle tissue, it can be subjective, especially when you think about the total muscular potential that adults have in a lifetime. If you were to think of what's the maximal amount of muscle that you can stack on above and beyond what an average untrained adult can put on as a male, that's right around, I want to say 25 to 35 pounds above and beyond the average untrained adult male. And so it is a lot of muscle that you have available to put on. But most people who get into physique culture and into the fitness thing may put on like, 10 to 15 pounds at most.
Yep.
Above and beyond the average. And that's fine. And that's a great goal. And that is actually conducive to longevity in the sense that muscle being our, in quotes, our body armor, which is something that a friend of mine, Gabrielle Lyon, she's really cool. Maybe you can hit her up and get her on one of these, man. She's just,
love to.
She's a gem of a chick, really. Muscle is our body armor and the furnace of our metabolic fuels. And it also just really dictates the health of our musculoskeletal system and thus our cardiometabolic system. And as we get into our 60s, that's really when Father Time, just at the population level, really starts attacking our muscle mass, our ability to keep it on. And so we have to proactively fight off the loss of muscle mass, really starting from our with a lot of people actually in their 50s and onward, just because of lifestyle factors that mitigate the retention of muscle tissue. So I'm like I said, I'm very much against the old longevity model where there's a bunch of protein restriction for its own sake because of a supposed hope of longevity due to lowering the output of mTOR and IGF-1, which is a sound model in rodents and flies and worms, but it's not a sound model in humans, who are essentially in a battle to maintain the muscular fort once they get older. And sarcopenia and dynapenia, sort of the cousin of sarcopenia, which is a age-related strength loss, while sarcopenia is age-related muscle loss. Both of those things are like the twin serpents of physical decline as far as the aging population is concerned. And so we actually need to prioritize the optimization of protein, which happens right around double the RDA. So in other words, 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight, and even up to a full gram per pound, or 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight is perfectly fine. People have this irrational fear of high protein intakes for fear of kidney function and liver function, and the data just aren't there to support that unless you have pre-existing chronic kidney disease. Then there's considerations to make in that area. Okay, so I'm done with that tangent. I know you asked me about the vegetarian or plant-based proteins versus animal-based proteins. I'm going to give you sort of the overview answer to that, and then I'm going to fill it in with some details. So the overview is, indeed, plant-based proteins are inferior to a mix of plant and animal-based proteins. So omnivory is the ultimate, it's the ultimate optimization as far as protein is concerned. And this is because even if you were to supplement the diet as a plant-based or strict vegan, there are still animal-based compounds that you're not going to be getting. Now, these aren't necessarily going to make or break lifespan and health span, but objectively speaking, and ignoring orders of magnitude that may be infinitesimal or just tiny little differences. Omnivorous diets contain nutrients, not necessarily essential nutrients, but beneficial nutrients, and I'll give a few examples that you just can't get in vegan diets. So, for example, especially when we're talking about muscle gain and retention. So, for example, kind of an obvious one, an obvious compound within meats that you're not going to get in any plant matter is creatine. So, so you'll have to supplement with that as a strict vegan in order to be on a level playing field with omnivores and carnivore types. Other compounds that don't necessarily have the same ergogenic potential as creatine, but still contribute to the health and function of lean tissues are carnitine, the similar sounding carnosine, a compound called anserine, pardon me, anserine, and there is a compound called 4-hydroxyproline that plays a major role in collagen formation and even with the inner structures of the eye, the retina, and even stuff like, well, collagen as well. cholesterol even. Not going to get that from plants. And that's a good start of compounds that, unless you're actually supplementing those things in the diet, you're just not going to get them in any plant sources. Another one, EPA and DHA. You can get that from plant sources, but you'll have to go real specialized, like algae-based supplementation in order to try to get DHA. DHA is just one of those compounds that's extremely, extremely difficult to get from a non-omnivorous diet. And there are other things to take into consideration. Sometimes the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. If you're just cutting out seafood completely, you're cutting out fish completely, or you're cutting out dairy completely. I mean, the matrix of those foods can be very beneficial to health and longevity. And I just have to say, and I'm sorry to say this to vegans, but who knows exactly what sort of compromise they may be putting on long-term health and longevity? Probably not much. I mean, maybe you're looking at, who knows, maybe a few months or a handful of years versus a truly optimized omnivorous diet, but you're just not on the same playing field.
That makes sense. That makes total sense.
And you can supplement, okay? And you can supplement. And I would concede that the population level data on vegans shows favorable effects compared to population level data on non-vegans. But we're not necessarily drawing a comparison between optimized omnivorism versus veganism.
Right.
We're mainly drawing comparisons between shitty omnivorism and veganism.
Yeah, the standard American diet. Right.
That's right. That's right. And so protein wise, getting a little bit closer to your actual question that you asked like 30 minutes ago. The protein quality is better with the animal-based proteins versus plant-based proteins. And by protein quality, I mean the proportion of essential amino acids within the protein source. And there's also typically higher within the essential amino acids, the key anabolic driving amino acids being the branched chain amino acids, and within those, the key anabolic driver being leucine. It's usually higher in animal proteins, not in every case, but in most common cases. And so one way to kind of hedge your bets towards a level playing field is to make sure if you go strictly plant-based for your protein sources, then you may want to shoot for roughly 10 to 20% higher protein intake than what we know to optimize protein intake in omnivores.
Okay.
And so that way you won't necessarily have to supplement the diet with extra essential amino acids or extra leucine, just consume a little bit more overall. And there are some preliminary data, unfortunately, on untrained subjects showing that as long as the resistance training is progressive, at least in these shorter term longitudinal studies, 12 weeks or so, vegans can keep up with the omnivores in terms of muscle gain and strength gain. But once again, we've only looked at untrained subjects in this stuff. But as long as total daily protein was optimized at 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight, then there were no significant differences, interestingly, in between the vegan diet and the omnivorous diet. And this is recently researched by Heva, Lorraine, and colleagues that raised a bunch of eyebrows and was actually a big win for the plant-based camp.
Very interesting. Yeah. That's a good reminder of the importance of our body armor and the protein requirements that you discussed. I know we maybe have about 5 more minutes. I wanted to slip in a question. If you,
I can go longer than that. Is Zoom just going to kind of?
I don't know. That's what it told me. 10 minutes. I don't know.
Well, when it cuts out, we'll just go again because I know I made you wait for me for 10 minutes as I took care of some.
Well, were you done discussing the vegetarian topic? I didn't want to cut you off.
Ooh. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'm about done. Yeah.
I was really super curious. I wanted to discuss a little bit about resistance training in addition to nutrition. So I wanted to ask you and learn from you some of your training and cardio exercise protocols. So in other words, how do you what do you look at when you're doing your frequency and your routine? How often are you incorporating recovery? And then do you
Mhm.
take like formal breaks from lifting like once a month or intentionally incorporating like deloading?
Yeah. These are really, really good questions. This really should have been a this should have been one of those public podcast things, man.
Wow, so happy.
so so yeah, the way that I do it for myself, I auto regulate the days a week that I resistance train. And so I don't train with a whole lot of volume per session. So if I were to do sort of a low key phase of resistance training, then, well, actually, I have settled into a routine that I really love. It's 5 days a week. And the way that I divide it up is I have two different upper body days and two very similar-ish lower body days. And the reason for that is there's just more to train on the upper body compared to, you know, the lower body. And so the way that I structure it is that on day one, I train, and some people might get amused at sort of the old school bodybuilding style, but I train chest back traps on Mondays, and on Tuesdays I train legs and abs basically. So lower body, and I don't mind throwing in direct ab work. I'm not one of these guys who just says, "Oh, everything the core just gets trained with that." I enjoy my freaking abs, and I like to train them directly. I enjoy the aesthetics of, of it. And then day three, I will do a specialization day for biceps, triceps, and shoulders, and forearms. I throw them on that specialization day right in the middle there, Wednesday. And then on Thursday, I'll do lower body again for the second time. And then on Friday, I will do chest, back, and traps for the second time. And then on Saturday and Sunday, I'll take that time off, and I'll take whatever opportunity I can to engage in recreational physical activity with the family. And training 5 days a week like that is plenty for me. Each session takes like 45 minutes to an hour. I personally don't enjoy endurance work, so I basically never do it. My endurance work really kind of boils down to muscular endurance when I do high rep sets with little rest in between. And so my repetition range typically goes from as low as 7 to as high as 17-ish. And what my set volume per body part per week, or set volume per muscle group per week, ranges from 8 to 10, 8 to 12. So it's nothing particularly scary high about any of that volume. And a lot of folks have the philosophy that the compound movements train the smaller muscles like biceps and triceps. Like the pushing movements will sufficiently hit the triceps, and the pulling movements will sufficiently hit the biceps. But I take a little bit more of a bodybuilding angle, where I don't think it's a one-to-one ratio of effectiveness for those things. I think it's a little bit more of like a 0.5 to 1. So I just basically hit the buys and tries and shoulders and forearms again in the week for a for a specialization type of thing. Because you know what, man, I think that everybody should, who is into the whole physique culture thing and symmetry, should take a look at what muscle groups, what body parts they think need the most work, and reserve a little time to focus on them directly. And I've always been interested in having certain body parts that stand out, and certain body parts that I've been trying to bring up as well. And so it's sort of a physique culture thing
That
that
makes
gets
sense.
incorporated into my program.
That makes total sense. Customization to your needs.
Yeah.
Um, and if we have time for this one, it tells me I have a little bit of time left. One of my trainer friends in my group asked me to ask you this question. How much harder is it for a 50-year-old to be in elite shape versus a 35-year-old? If you have any thoughts on that.
It's a little bit harder if you only just started at 50, because then you would need to spend a certain amount of time, that maybe a few years, to kind of get in on the same gears as the 35-year-old. But